UFC Vegas 17, we got number 5 ranked Stephen Wonderboy Thompson facing off against number 11th ranked Geoff Handz of Steel Neal. This is the last scheduled event in the UFC docket for 2020, and I'm here to break it down with my co-host, as always, AJ. AJ, how you doing, bro?
Man, I'm doing very well, Derick, man. How you been?
I'm good, man. I'm feeling really good, and I'm really excited for these fights. Not only because, like I said, this is the last card of this dreaded 2020 year with all the COVID cancellations and all the craziness and shifting at the last minute and whatnot, but also I think 2021 UFC, man, we're gonna have a lot of great cards on the docket. So I'm just ready to keep it moving, man. I did want to start off with a little bit of breakdown, AJ, man, you know, respectively, since the main event, Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno was ruled a majority draw. Before we talk about that stuff, let's give a little accountability lesson today, man. So both of us, we tied. We were tied in our head-to-head in this last bout, 2-2-1. The one that we both missed on, which is something in hindsight, I think that it was really evident and really clear. We're probably a little biased, but the Tony Ferguson, Charles Oliveira fight, man, you know, Oliveira showed why he's ready to fight for a championship, and that's my first question, man. Do you think Oliveira is ready to take that championship belt at 155 pounds, regardless of, you know, who is the champion? Right now it's Khabib, but obviously dude's retired. We're going to see where we're going to go from here. What do you think?
Well, Derick, I think the proof's in the pudding on that one. You know, Oliveira proved that he's a lot better than who a lot of people in the MMA community held at a very high regard. So showing that skill set, I mean, it either, you know, I personally, if I was Oliveira, I'd go one more fight and then jump to it, not necessarily jump right into the sharks, you know, right away, but especially being in the 155-pound division. But yeah, I think his skill showed it, man. What do you think?
Listen, man, I was really high on Charles, and it might not have sounded like, it might sound crazy, like I'm like, oh yeah, I was high on him before, even despite what I had said in the last episode, but I've historically been high on Charles Oliveira besides a couple of weight issues and whatnot. I think he's ready to get it, man. I honestly think he's ready, whoever is in front of him, man, to do to Tony Ferguson what he did, which he had him locked in the tightest armbar I've ever seen. Ever in my days watching UFC or any MMA, I've never seen a fighter not tap to an armbar when your arm is literally hyperextended past here, it's just all the way bent. Listen, man, it was a geometry equation is what Tony Ferguson's arm looked like at that time, man. So I think he's ready for a shot. But I got one last point of recap before we get into the stuff people are here for to watch is, you know, the UFC Vegas 17 card. Listen, man. The main event, it ended in a majority draw, like I just said. I want to know how you feel about that. And if they were to run it back, how do you think the second fight would play out?
Well, I mean, I think it speaks levels because I would say it was also a very close fight. And being the point taken away in the third round does change the tide. But I still would give the nod to Figueiredo. I don't necessarily think it played that much in, or Moreno did actually a lot to necessarily control it. Although it was a very close fight and the closest we've seen Figueiredo have, I definitely think they should run it back soon. But being that they both fought 3 weeks ago, you know, give them a little time off because it was the fight of the night.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
How do you feel?
Well, I agree, man. And I do think that fighting twice in 21 days for both of these fighters definitely impacted both of their performances, man. But in all honesty, I thought Brandon Moreno, he looked better than Figueiredo did in the championship rounds, which is really telling because he was fighting the champion. The champion is supposed to look good in the championship rounds, man. I think if they run it back, listen, man, the 21 days, that's really a big factor because Figueiredo, some say it's an excuse, but he said he was, you know, hospitalized and he had stomach issues. And listen, I just think Brandon Moreno, given another opportunity, will do enough to edge out the champ, man. Because, listen, the point got taken away. Why? Because Figueiredo kicked Moreno in the nuts, straight up shin to nut. And, you know, it's the cup, obviously, but you can't do that. And I'm glad that the referee stepped in, man, because there's too many referees that will allow a dude to get compromised before actually taking a point, which, you know, is not necessarily fair, but that's neither here and there. Well, that is that, man. Let's get into some sleepers. How about that, man? I'll start us off. I want to go straight to the point with these joints, folks. I'm going to let you know these sleeper fights that I got 3 of them. AJ got 3 of them. I'm just going to let you know why it is a sleeper, and all the breakdown we'll leave it for the main card, right? So I'm going to start off, man. So I got a couple of 185ers here, man, but this is an interesting story. So I got Carl Baby K. Robertson is fighting against Dalcha champion Lungiambula. And Lungiambula is pulling a Jared Cannonier to the absolute fullest, man. This dude spent the majority of his career fighting at heavyweight and light heavyweight, and is, slowly but surely making that transition all the way down to 185 pounds, where, listen, man, these are two fighters who are near 500 in their career. So this is a real crossroads fight, man, because whoever wins this is moving on. Whoever loses, they're taking a step back. Lungiambula, he's a shorter, more compact fighter who's finished 60% of his wins. And like I said, he's following that Cannonier approach. Robertson, he's a 6'1" southpaw who likes to submit his opponents, man. So the winner of this moves a step closer to the top 15 in the middleweight division. The loser, like I said, not going to be in them rankings. That's my first sleeper. AJ, what you got next?
First up for me, Derick, I got Tafon the Don Nunchukwe versus Jamie Pickett. All right, now Tafon the Don, he's one of those Dana White Contender Series prospects, and he's coming up hot. He's looking good. He's 4-0, and what it impressed me, he looked extremely labored in his last fight, but his technique stayed strong. He looked good, and it's going to be exciting to see what he does in the 185-pound division, because his boy is thick. Now, Jamie Pickett is very fast and very talented, and he's still very young. Being 32, you think they're young, but homeboy is still very young in the MMA game. Now, I picked this fight because it is like two young guns looking to make a big splash, coming in and prove they belong. Now, with cuts looming, like I usually like to say, desperation makes a necessity, and these 185ers really need to impress. So I think that driving factor is going to be part of the show, and I'm excited to see what they bring. What do you think, Derick? What's your next sleeper?
Right on, man. I got two familiar names here in my next sleeper. I got some ladies bantamweights here. Number 13 ranked Sajara Sarge Eubanks versus number 14 ranked Pani Banzai Kianzad, man. And this is a sleeper because of this reason. First off, they're both popular names here on this show. I'm big fans of both of these fighters. More on Sajara Eubanks than I was when I first brought her name up some months ago now. But ultimately, listen, man, this is 13 versus 14 at the back end of the top 15 in this division, man. Eubanks is a really strong boxer / wrestler, and Kianzad is a kickboxer, man. Both Eubanks, she has 2 knockouts. Kianzad has 3 knockouts, and neither of them have submission. So I think this is more or less going to be a stand-up affair. This is pretty much why this is a sleeper, man. Eubanks, she generally has an advantage over her opponents in terms of the wrestling, but Kianzad has a 92% takedown defense. So if this stays on the ground, man, you're going to see some ladies getting punched in their face, and I think it's going to be awesome, man. Sajara Eubanks, she's also never been finished, but Kianzad has been knocked out once and submitted twice. So there's a little something extra on the line in this bout, man. It's taking someone's O in terms of being finished is always a proud moment in someone's career. So that's my next sleeper. What you got next, AJ?
Derick, it seems like familiar faces are becoming the ways of the UFC, and I got one right here exactly with that, with my next sleeper, Jaron Nguyen versus Antonio Ahoyo. Now, these fighters, they've just been active lately, so that's why we know him. And Jaron Nguyen, he came in highly touted out of that AKA kickboxing camp, and so far he hasn't really performed to his expectation. He does have heavy shots and amazing wrestling, so it's always exciting to see him in the cage. But Antonio Ahoyo is going to be a big match for this boy. Now, Antonio Ahoyo, he comes very strong and very good kicks, and he's very above average athleticism, which you don't really see in the UFC, being I guess heavy wrestlers and whatnot. But Antonio Ahoyo, he looks good on paper, but he also has proven to have some holes in his grappling game, and so far throughout his UFC history. But I picked this fight for a sleeper, Derick, because both fighters should feel the heat not impressing the UFC and coming out looking like a stale from what they were expected. Now, even going back to my last sleeper, this is another one where a desperate man is a scary man, and these fighters are desperately need to impress people with cuts on the edge, as we have been seeing with the what's looming in the horizon, I guess. Now, they're both on a losing streak, with Ahoyo losing 1 and then Jaron Nguyen losing 2 in a row. So it's going to be exciting to see what that pressure makes for this fight. What do you got for your third?
All right, man. So my third sleeper, of course, I'm going to really break it down here on the main card. So I'm just going to let you know why it is a sleeper. We got two fighters here they've come together simply because the UFC brass needed this fight to happen, man. Fights falling out all over the place. Let's get a couple fighters, another extra run before the end of the year, man. So Jillian Robertson, number 13th ranked over at the women's flyweight division, is facing off against Tyler Santos, who I talked about, I believe, last week or the week before, but her fight got scrapped too. So Robertson, man, she was originally slated to fight number 11th ranked Andrea Lee, but she broke her nose in training and it fell through. So now Robertson, all the pressure is in her corner, facing an unranked opponent who has 10 knockouts under her belt. But Jillian Robertson, she is no slouch, man. She's finished 5 of her 6 UFC wins by a finish, man. So tune in. I'm going to break it down more on the main card. Picks. AJ, what's your last sleeper?
I'm with you right there, Derick. I'm a big fan of Tyler Santos also, but my next sleeper is Michelle Pereira versus Chaos Williams. Now, another big names we know, man. They're staying active. Michelle Pereira, super flashy, Brazilian. Dude, this dude is always looking for a highlight reel finish. I'm excited for this guy. Now, Chaos Williams, the same thing, man. Now, I don't think anyone is more serious than Chaos in there, and he makes for a very entertaining fighter. And this is exactly as a main card fight, so we'll break it down a little more. But I picked this for a sleeper specifically because I think it's going to be very fast, very intense, and potentially fight of the night candidate. So I'm excited for this one. It's time for
some main cards, man. Yeah, let's go. So, all right, we're going to start off this card. It was originally slated for, I believe, 7 fights. We're down to 6 now at this point for the main card, I believe. But here we go. Match number 1. We got Martine Tybura facing off against Greg Hardy. So we got Tybura versus the Prince of War. I still got heavy air quotes, man, because listen, Greg Hardy, he's been getting it done. And listen, man, you can't take anything away from the man because a win is a win is a win, and he's been racking them up in the UFC more or less. This is a football player. You know, what are we talking about here? But in all honesty, man, this is going to be absolutely the toughest test to date. And if Greg Hardy passes this test, we can't talk any more trash. At least I can. I know you're not talking, but I can't talk any more trash, man. So let me set the table, man. Martine Tybura, he does not move like a normal heavyweight, man. He's a volume striker to a degree, and he's won 5 of his 7 UFC bouts via decision. Not the most exciting heavyweight in the world, in all honesty. But those include wins against Ben Rothwell and Sergey Spivak, 2 impressive fighters in the heavyweight division. Now, what do you expect to see out of Tybura against a Greg Hardy who also doesn't move like any other heavyweight, man? Dude is a former NFL athlete, dog, you know? So what you expect to see?
I expect to see Tybura come out and really actually labor Greg Hardy. Try to drag him into the deep waters and get him tired because, like you said, he's fast and he's big, but I don't necessarily know if that leads to the biggest of gas tanks. Because I think what Greg Hardy's biggest advantage is that quickness that he does possess, being from a different sport. But Martine Tybura, he's fast. I just don't think, I personally, I don't know, and I might ask you this question, Derick, how do you think he would do dropping down to the 205 division? Because I think he's a little more built for that, being that he can't necessarily finish the heavyweights. He could definitely drop down and start doing some real damage in that division.
You know what, man? I don't think moving down to 205 would serve him very well. I don't necessarily think he has the speed advantage or the power advantage to even. I don't think his power is that transcendent. And listen, man, I'm just an observer. This is just from what I'm watching. But to be honest with you, and it's just a criticism in my opinion, man. Tybura is the least fun fighter to watch win in the UFC to me. When I watched him beat Ben Rothwell, it just wasn't fun to see. It was like a small dude just sticking and moving, doing his thing, and it's like, this is not a heavyweight fight. Now, once again, a win is a win, man. So I think it'll be best for him to maybe take a different approach at times, and instead of being the volume striker that he is, he's not really even a volume striker, but instead of just pillow punching, really sit down on some of those shots and see how it affects his opposition. I just would like to see. He came into the UFC, I believe, his first 1 or 2 fights, he finished his opponents, and ever since then, it's just been decisions from there, man. But in all honesty, man, the biggest advantage in this fight, it has to be the wrestling of Martine Tybura, followed by the power of Hardy, obviously. Now, do you think Tybura will even entertain striking with Hardy? It doesn't even make sense. If you're a grizzled UFC vet like he is, or just a grizzled MMA vet, dude's got 26 fights under his belt, right? Do you think he will try to stand up or get into that half guard and clinch and just try to control the fight from there?
I mean, if he doesn't get outstruck on the stand up, I definitely think he's going to try to just stand up and see, just for entertainment factor. But I mean, if he's getting outstruck and he really feels the power of Hardy, I think Tybura is going to have to go in there, at least shoot a single leg or something, get in close, clinch up, and really make Hardy take on his weight. But I mean, time will tell. If he's quicker and he's keeping him at range, it's going to be exciting to see Tybura. I mean, a win is a win is a win, and if Tybura doesn't get touched and he's just keeping and peppering him from distance, pop, 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 it's a win. It's exciting to some.
To some, but that's not what's gonna move you up them rankings and get you to big fights, man. It's just peppering people to death, right? But like you say, a win is a win, man. So listen, we've seen Greg Hardy, man. This is my biggest criticism. We've seen Greg Hardy struggle time after time after time with his cardio in the third round when he's been racking up a couple decisions. Don't get me wrong here. Now he's a heavyweight, so it's to be expected. But gassing in the third round sounds like an absolute death wish against a fighter like Martine Tybura, in my opinion, man. So do you think Hardy has to get Tybura out of there early to win? What are the scenarios of him winning? What do you think?
I don't necessarily know if he has to get him out of there to win, just because I think Hardy has the chin to take the damage and not really get knocked out, so not really get in danger zone of Hardy. Now, if he was in there with like Rosenstruck or even the Black Beast, that's a different story, because you don't want those guys touching your chin even once. Whereas Tybura, you can land a couple and he'd still be all right, especially with a big boy like Hardy. Now, does he solely need to get him out early? I don't think so, because I think Hardy, I think what's my biggest positive note for him is he's starting to train a lot. You can really see him growing. I think he's going to become a bigger of a gas tank in the later rounds. Because you're right, he has been dying in the third, and if you're dying in the third, you definitely can't make it to the fifth. So you got to get there. So.
100%, man. And listen, he trains at American Top Team, so it's like, all right, what are we talking? Come on, man. You got a great team around you. You better be making it happen, man. But all right, so who are you going with? What's your pick for the fight?
Man, for me, I got Hardy by decision. I know it's crazy, I always I try to put personal life outside of fight life, man, because outside I wouldn't necessarily be a Hardy fan, but I got him by decision. I don't think Marcin Tybura is going to actually do enough damage to actually put him in the danger zone, so I'm going to go Hardy by decision.
Interesting, man. Well, listen, the odds makers are with you right there, because Hardy is a -120 favorite in this one. Odds courtesy of 5 dimes. But I'm going Marcin Tybura, man. The reason why is because I held out a little information on you, Adrian. I apologize. But I was watching some pre-fight interviews, and Tybura said, he was like, listen, it's clear that Hardy wants to strike. Hardy's got the power advantage. I'm going to take him to the ground. And that's clearly the wrestling is my advantage, and that's what we're going to utilize. So I honestly believe if that is your game plan, unless Hardy pulls a Black Beast and says, like, what is jiu-jitsu, bro? Just stand up. Like, unless he pulls something like that, it's going to be a long night for Greg Hardy, in my opinion. But let's move on to the next one, man. So this was my sleeper. Number 13th ranked Jillian Robertson facing off against Taila Santos at the women's 125-pound division, which is the flyweight division. Now, so like I said, I was going to break this down a lot further, man. Jillian the Savage Robertson. I picked against her in her last fight against Poliana Botelho, and I lost. She won via decision. It was another tough Brazilian, one that actually mimics Taila Santos, her current opponent right now, pretty well. But she is facing off against a fighter in Taila Santos who has 10 knockouts under her belt. Now, similar to Tybura versus Hardy, man, we have a stark stylistic contrast in this matchup, right? Jillian Robertson, she's blossoming into a legitimate contender in that women's flyweight division with incredible wrestling and grappling. Submissions are the name of the game, right? Santos, she's still pretty unproven at this point. I mean, fights have been falling through, so that's not necessarily her fault. But listen, she's known for her 10 knockouts, which is unheard of in the women's division. So odds makers have this fight as more or less of a pick'em, man. So what I want to know is, do you think Santos, I know you're a fan, but objectively, do you think Santos is as dangerous as the odds makers think? Jillian Robertson is a much more proven fighter than Santos. Why do you think the odds makers got this one as a pick'em?
I think the odd makers are a little biased in this one as well, if I have to be completely honest. And I think that's just because most fans favor a striker. Yeah. People just don't want to see somebody who, like Jillian Roberts, she's fantastic grappler, and she's going to look to take this fight to the ground very quick. So I definitely think there's some bias there, especially because every fight starts on the feet. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I want to say part of it is that reason, but the other reason I would have to argue, this is what popped up into my mind. Jillian Robertson, she wants to take the fight to the ground, right? Well, in the pre-fight interviews, Tyler Santos says, that's fine. I'll just submit you there. Like, what are we talking about, And she was so casual and cavalier about it, right? She was all like, that's fine. I'll just submit her. Like, you know what I mean? It's all good. Jillian Robertson, man, she's a tough test, and her grappling is definitely something that you should not take lightly. But Tyler Santos, with 2 submission wins under her belt, man, I think she might be coming in a little overconfident, right? So ultimately, prior to her last fight, which was a decision win with Jillian Robertson, man, she was on a 7-fight finishing streak in the UFC, bro. Crazy, right? Part one of those fights was in a regional circuit, but UFC for the rest of them, right? So Tyler Santos, she has 8 first-round finishes under her belt. Do you think this bout goes to the distance?
I actually do, Derick. I actually do, just because I think that that Jillian Roberts is going to actually do good coming in and show her a little bit more experience that she hasn't seen. And things are going to end up in the clinch a lot. Things are going to be rolling around a lot. And I think Tyler Santos is going to want to prove that she has a lot more ground game and a lot more well-rounded than just those 10 KOs. Because personally, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Tyler Santos is the next generation of female fighter that we're going to see. Very, very strong, very well-rounded, and hopefully we're going to see it proven. And I make the joke that if the girl's only given a feather, she can still crack an egg, bro. She hits hard. Even guys don't want to train with her. She's just like Amanda Nunes in that aspect where, you're going to feel her no matter who you are fighting her. And I'm excited to see what she has coming up. And that's actually why I'm a big fan. Do you think that translates in both the fight where she gets hit, like, okay, Jillian's going to come in, take her down, leading into Santos's game plan? Like, come on, bring it on. It's all good. I'll submit you. I'll hit you on my feet, submit you.
In all honesty, man, I think it might play into the game plan, but I think Santos, she has a little bit of an advantage, man. If she can keep it on the feet, she has a 5-inch reach advantage. And you got to think the legs are even longer. So she got a lot of reach on Robertson if she can keep it on the feet, man. But I don't know. I think her game plan truly is, let's just submit you. Like, that's fine. I know where you want to take it, and I'm really confident in myself there. So we'll see what happens, man. But I did want to note out 2 interesting notes before we wrap this up, man. So the first one was what I already mentioned. Tyler Santos has a 5-inch reach advantage, which is that's a lot of inches when you're in that cage, in that small cage too, right? But Jillian Robertson, she actually used to train at American Top Team, and she just left her camp, man. She left her camp with Dean Thomas. So Dean Thomas was a striking coach at American Top Team. They both respectively left, and she said she really enjoyed having the whole team aspect, a lot of training partners, but she really likes getting personalized, individualized attention from Dean Thomas, which is a fan favorite in terms of coaching in MMA. So anytime there's a camp switch, it's always going to be interesting to see. Just like Mackenzie Dern had a camp switch prior to her fight. She was at Black House, and then she went to RBCA, right, and won the fight. Interesting. Who would have known what would have happened if she didn't make that switch? So something we have to consider, man. Now, for the picks, who you going with and why?
Man, I got Santos by decision. I think she is a little too confident in her ground game, at least as far as how decorated Robertson is. So I think it's going to be a little harder than she wants, but I still think she's going to get the nod at the end. What do you got?
I'm going Jillian Robertson, and I'm going with 2nd-round KO, ground and pound. And here's the reason why. Jillian Robertson, she says, I know that sounds crazy, but Jillian Robertson said this after her last win against, why am I blanking on her name? Poliana Botelho. This is what she said. Yeah, I got the win, but I'm really mad at myself. This is like right when they interview after the win. She's like, I got the win, but I'm really upset right now. And they asked her why. She was all like, because I didn't finish her. And I was like, damn. She was more concerned about her finishing streak than she necessarily was about just the win in and of itself. So that means she is a savage, and she's coming for blood, and it's going to be a really interesting fight, man. But let's move on to the next one. So match number 3 on the main card for UFC Vegas 17 is actually, this is a really crazy fight, man. I'm really excited for this one. But we got the Magic Man. We got number 3 ranked Marlon Magic Moraes facing off against number 11th ranked Rob Font, man. In all honesty, I think a lot of people have no idea who this Rob Font is, but you're going to find out this Saturday, man. So let's set the table, man. I think it's safe to say Marlon Moraes is clearly the most feared fighter in the bantamweight division during the first round of any fight. has to be the most feared in the first round. But as history has shown us, Moraes, he fades in the later rounds pretty much every single time, man. Even in a 3-round fight, he will fade in that third round. Do you think it's wise for him to stick to his tried and true approach of, listen, if I can get you out of there early, it's worth whatever cardio costs at the end of the day? Or do you think that, he should kind of reshape his game plan to go to the distance, man? He's only gone to the distance once in his last 5 fights. What do you think?
Man, I think at this point you stick to what got you to the show, especially because, 60 cuts are coming. And you don't want to be leaving things to decision in boring fights when everybody's on the chopping block, especially being Marlon Moraes. I mean, I think he's the perfect example of why a fighter needs to stay relevant, and why, especially if you're not winning or even getting some suspect split decisions, why you need to keep, talking shit instead of not being the nice guy like Marlon Moraes, because you're going to have young bucks like this unknown dude, Rob Font, just come in after, who was his last, Marlon Moraes' last 3 opponents? Henry Cejudo, Jose Aldo, Corey Sandhagen, all dudes that were in the mix. You're in the top of the show. Now you're fighting some scrub named Font. Like what? Like, and excuse me, I'm not calling Rob Font a scrub by all means. I'm just saying that satirically, because he isn't a scrub, man. Rob Font can fight, bro. In his last one against Simone, he was getting it. So, but it speaks to the fact that Marlon Moraes is very scary in the first round, like you were saying, and not necessarily anytime after that.
Yeah, man. And so you said dudes that were in the mix, man. Let's just talk about the last 5, dog. So Jose Aldo, former featherweight champion. Henry Cejudo, former, that was actually a title fight, former bantamweight champion. And then I guess that is the last. And Corey Sandhagen, he is a soon to be title challenger, I suppose. Yeah, man, crazy. It's crazy because if you look at Rob Font's last 5 fights, Ricky Simon, Sergio Pettis, Rafael Asuncao, Thomas Almeida, Pedro Munoz. Those are some heavy hitters too. It's just not the same caliber of competition. You've got a dude fighting straight champions versus, some dudes who could be contenders, right? So listen, man, in the last fight, Rob against Ricky Simon, like you mentioned, Rob Font, he cut off the cage and he established himself as the lead dance partner from the get-go, just from the absolute beginning of the fight. Now, he used his length, his wrestling, and his counter uppercut very, very effectively to secure a decision win, man. But he also, got an ACL issue in there that he had to recover from. So he's coming off of an ACL surgery. Now, do you think that pressure approach can work for Rob Font when you're fighting a power fighter like Moraes?
I think, I definitely. It's a scary one because you were gonna have to eat some shots.
Oh yeah.
If you're coming in on Moraes, the good news is you're gonna be avoiding a lot of the kicks. Mm-hmm. But the bad news is, if you see the lats on Moraes, he can crack as well. So it's gonna be testing Rob Font's chin. But I think that's his best strategy going forward is put Moraes on his heels, see what he has to do. Hopefully he doesn't have as much power when he's moving backwards.
Yeah, and it's an interesting approach because it kind of works the same thing for both fighters, right? If Moraes pressures Font, well, then it's really hard to wrestle off of your back foot. But if Font pressures Moraes, well, it's really hard to be a power striker off your back foot, which leads me to say, man, I really think the X factor will be the wrestling and the clinch in this fight, man. I think whoever has more success there has a pretty good shot of winning, man, in my opinion. What is your X factor, for this bout?
My X factor is that pressure you were actually just speaking about, okay. Derick, especially because Rob Font, he has everything to win and absolutely nothing to lose. That's true. Marlon Moraes, he's not talking shit about anybody, so he can easily just take this next fight because Marlon Moraes, losing all the fights he has, he doesn't really have anywhere to go. Like what does Marlon Moraes have to gain from this fight? Just nothing, not letting somebody take his power. Or take his spot. Like that's about it. Not take his shine. But Rob Font, man, he's moving up. He's moving up in the ranks. If he could take out a dude Magic Marlon Moraes, man, that's a big name on his list. So I don't know. I guess that would be my X factor. The fact that he doesn't have anything to lose and he can put that pressure on. Because if he loses the fight, okay, he's just still at number 11.
I'm with you. So here we go, man. Ultimately, Rob Font, he's 5'8", so he got 2 inches in a height on Moraes. He's got a 71-inch reach, so he got 4-inch reach advantage on Moraes, and he's fighting out of New England Cartel, man. And I don't know if you're familiar, but that's the same camp that Calvin Kattar fights out of, man. Some tough cats over there on the East Coast, you know what I'm saying? And it's really interesting is because what really got me more hyped up on Rob Font is that Calvin Kattar was like, bro, like, I don't understand how people are sleeping on this guy still. This dude is an absolute monster. And he absolutely is, just from watching his fights, man. So, average fight time for these two fighters. For Moraes, it's 8 minutes and 51 seconds. For Rob Font, it's 9 minutes and 38 seconds. But I'm going to say this, because you said that Rob Font has nothing to lose. He actually has one thing to lose here, and it's not necessarily in terms of the numbers, the stats, right? Rob Font, he's never been finished, or he's never been knocked out. He's been submitted once. He's never been knocked out, man. And when you've never been knocked out, you always have something to lose. And if there's anyone that can knock him out, it's Magic Marlon Moraes. So who is your pick, AJ? Who are you going with?
Yeah, you definitely got to watch out for that Moraes head kick, man. That can come at any moment. You're right there. But personally, Derick, I got Derick Font by decision.
Or Rob Font? Yeah, Rob Font.
My bad.
No, it's all good. So I got Moraes, man. And to be clear, right, to be transparent, I actually switched my pick just like, maybe within the hour before actually recording this because of finding out about Rob Font coming off the ACL injury, man. You always got to be a little skeptical about anybody coming off of an injury, excuse me, I apologize. But yeah, man, we'll see how it goes. I would not be surprised to see either of these fighters win, but let's be clear, odds, Rob Font, he's a plus 125 underdog. Moraes is a minus 145 favorite. So let's move on to the next one, which is your sleeper, man. And this is, dude, I am so excited for this fight. We got a bunch of welterweights here, man. This is match number 4. We got Michel Demolidor Paeta, man, facing off against Chaos, the Ox Fighter Williams, man, a dude who is starching everybody that steps in front of him, at least in the UFC, man. So to set the table, listen, man, the biggest contrast in this whole entire matchup has to be the average fight time. Paeta is sitting at a nice 11 minutes and 9 seconds. Williams, 29 seconds. Little bit of a different contrast, man. But what that tells us is that Chaos Williams, there's still a lot to be seen out of him, man. We've only seen him put his opponents to sleep, and that's not his fault, right? He's probably like, yo, I want to show you a little bit more. These dudes keep going to sleep, man. It's not personal. It's just punishment. Wise words of the man, Chaos Williams, right? So ultimately, neither of us have seen it yet, but do you think Williams' fight style can go 3 entire rounds versus high level UFC competition?
I mean, time's going to tell on that one, Derick, but what I've seen of Chaos Williams, his technique is solid, and he's very smart. Like everyone's saying his power, but what he uses and what I think the X factor is going into this fight is what makes him so smart is he uses his opponent's speed coming in. When he starched Al Hassan, it wasn't because he had this load up, crazy, strong, strike. He literally threw it from the chin, quick little right, moving forward while Hassan was coming in. He just starched him because Hassan just had so much force actually going in for it. Now, it's the same thing against Pereira, where he's such a talented, quick, fast striker, flashy. Being able to use that speed coming in, I think, is what's going to do the job here for it. Now, does that lead to a long-term fight? I think so, because he's able to actually, output only the necessary energy that he needs instead of winging shots for the KO finish all the time.
Interesting, man. And that's a great point. And this is my rebuttal to that, man. Both of these fighters, right, they utilize a lot of kicks, but they do it in different ways. It's completely different ways, right? So like Paeta, he likes the high kicks, the body kicks, other capoeira style striking, right? He'll do the Showtime kick. He'll jump off the cage and kick you. He'll do a Superman punch and he does a lot of acrobatics, man. A lot of crazy capoeira type stuff, right? Now, Chaos Williams, he wants to chew up those legs. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about a man who's about his business. That's as business-like as you get. Let me just chew up those legs. I don't need any extra movements at all. So just out of curiosity, this is just for me personally, man. Who do you think lands the more effective kicks in this fight? Like, not in their history, but in this fight, who do you think will end up landing the more effective kicks?
I think it's going to be Chaos Williams, man. When you're getting kicked, you just can't jump around like you used to anymore. Yeah. You take 1, 2 of those things, you just don't necessarily have that fast twitch, that bounce that you need. And I mean, if you watch any pitted fights, man, he jumps up and tries to knee you in the face a lot. And I think that's kind of his big thing, is that kind of surprise effect. Where Chaos Williams, you can't really surprise him, man, because he locks you down from the jump. Right when he sees you, man, he's locking you down. He doesn't blink. So
It's interesting, man, because one of those things is fun. It's like you took the words out of my mouth, man. One of those things that makes Paeta so effective is his constant movement and his low hands and bouncing around and doing all that, right? Very Wonderboy-esque, in my opinion, man, except with a lot more showboating, you know, and that might lead to his downfall, in all honesty. You should not showboat against this man, Chaos Williams, from what he has shown us so far. But how big of a test do you believe this is for Chaos Williams specifically? Not for Paeta, but for Chaos Williams, because he is a plus 100 underdog in this fight.
Oh, this is actually a huge test, especially seeing what Paeta has done to his last opponents, man. It's like handing it to Diego Sanchez. You know, I'm a huge Diego Sanchez fan, obviously, but it's, you know, not even just him, dude. I'm a Dave Connolly, dude. Danny Roberts, that flying knee punch combo, man. This dude's a savage, man. I don't know. I think Paeta has a long future in this business, especially being very flashy. You know, he's only 27 years old, and he's big. He's very big for the 170-pound division, so he has a lot of room to move up. I think this is a huge fight for Williams, man. If Williams could get this done, it speaks levels to his fight game that we haven't seen yet, and I'm really excited for this one. What do you think?
Man, I think this is absolutely a huge test, but I also think it's the other way around too, man. I think this is a huge test for Paeta because you look at the last five: Zelim Imadaev, Diego Sanchez, or just his last four, because he's only got four, UFC books or UFC fights that are in the books, because he got a couple no contests in his record. But yeah, Diego Sanchez, Zelim Imadaev, Tristan Connolly, Danny Roberts, man. He's won two of those. He's lost two of those. I think this is going to be a pretty big test, man. Those are some names, man, but you got a young, up-and-coming dude who is probably not even necessarily in his prime yet. Dude just got into the UFC, so it's interesting, man. We'll see what happens, but this is what's the craziest thing to me, man, is that Paeta, he has a 71% finish rate in his career. Chaos Williams, 64% finish rate in his career. Combined, these dudes got about, let me see, over 40 fights combined, man. You know, this is going to be really interesting to see who comes out victorious, because whoever does, I think, is going to have an incredibly high stock. Williams' stock's already high, Paeta stock's already high, but whoever wins this fight is going through the absolute roof, because both dudes are on ends of viral knockouts, right? So it's like, in terms of just the social media, in terms of like MMA going mainstream, you got your Jake Pauls and all that, who's trying to like really blow this stuff up, man. I think the winner of this is going to make a lot of money in their future, man. So that leaves us for, the last and not least, man. Who's your pick and why?
Man, I got Williams KO round 2. We're going to see him get tested a little bit more than normal, but I definitely think he's going to get the finish right in round 2. What about you?
So I'm going Chaos Williams as well, and this is one of those things where for this bout, I had the winner, but I didn't have the method, and I'm thinking of it on the fly, man. And in all honesty, I'm going to go decision on this one, right? Because you come into the UFC, and though he has been starching people in 30 seconds, if the fight lasts 2-3 rounds, man, I mean, that's not 30 seconds. We got to see. Like we said, all those streaks, all the knockout streaks, all the craziness, that comes to an end in the UFC, and I would not be surprised to see it come to an end this weekend. But a win is a win is a win, and I'm giving Chaos Williams a big win this weekend against Michel Demolidor Paeta. So that's that, man. So let's move on to match number 5. This is the co-main event, and this is an action-packed card, dude. I love this fight. So we got a couple of bantamweights. We got a lot of small weight classes on this card, but we got number 7 ranked Jose Aldo, man, versus number 15th ranked Marlon Cheeto Vera. And first and foremost, man, I just want to say this to many hardcore fans, dog. Marlon Vera, he should be on a 5-fight win streak right now. I don't know if you know the context, AJ, but let me spell it out. He should be on a 5-fight win streak with 4 finishes in those 5 wins. He had a very controversial loss to Song Yadong. It was 2 fights ago for him. And listen, man, he's been on a tear besides that. So even with the momentum he has currently, he's viewed as a plus 120 underdog. Do you think Cheeto Vera deserves more respect than he's getting right now against the former champ in Jose Aldo?
I mean, even as a Sean O'Malley fan, I would definitely say that Cheeto Vera deserves a little more respect from the general public, because I mean, at least in what I've seen in the media, man, Cheeto Vera is saying every other name besides Aldo's. He's so hung up on the fact that he did lose the Song Yadong fight, and the fact that people aren't giving him the respect he needs after whooping O'Malley, So they're all saying it's a fluke. So I definitely think that even he feels that way too, and I think that's what a driving factor for this fight is, proving that he belongs with one of the greats, and doing against Jose Aldo, man. There's no greater.
Well, look, man, these are damn near identical fighters, dude. Both well, Jose Aldo's 5'7", Vera's 5'8", both 70-inch reach. Aldo's orthodox, Chito Vera switch stance, right? But we've seen Aldo switch as well, man. Listen, average fight time is pretty similar, about 13 minutes and 40 seconds for Aldo, about 10 minutes, 30 seconds for Vera. Like, very similar fighters, but we got one big difference, and that's in the last 5, man. So, Jose Aldo, everybody knows him. If you need to find out who this guy is, please do your homework, dude. You can't watch UFC without knowing who Jose Aldo is. But he's fresh off of 3 straight losses against Piotr Jan. We got to say the name right. Marlon Moraes and Alexander Volkanovski. Now, that's a current bantamweight and featherweight champion and a former bantamweight champion. And so what kind of game plan do you think Jose Aldo is going to come out for this fight, man? You come off of 3 straight losses, but they're against literally the top of the top. These are the champions and a former champion. It's kind of like the Marlon Moraes question. Does he change the game plan, or does he go in guns blazing like he has done time after time after time?
I mean, if you've seen I guess the progression of Jose Aldo over so many years of having the pleasure of watching him fight, he's tapered it off a little. And he doesn't necessarily have the blitz, or he even kind of lost the kicks now. But I have it written down, and it's funny that you say, man, that they're kind of similar, because in Chito Vera's last fight, he said that he's facing O'Malley, I'm talking about, is facing a kicker. You know, and that's what happens when you kick a kicker. Well, now Marlon Vera, Chito Vera, he's going in, he's facing the king of kickers.
Oh, yeah.
You know, also the king of Rio. You know, so he not only is he the basically who Marlon Vera looked up to growing up. Now, man, he's going against the king of kickers, man. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. What do you think?
Well, I want to actually have a question for you, man. First and foremost, and I mean, to answer your question, I do think Jose Aldo is gonna come out guns blazing, just like he always does, man. And I want to talk about those kicks in a second too, because I don't think they're gone. I think that's more of an intentional choice, man. But do you think that Marlon Vera, because you're right, a lot of fighters who fight against Jose Aldo probably after that first round have to like come back down to earth and say, oh, he's human too. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, like, that's like you somehow getting into, you know, some MMA bout and then you get to fight Anderson Silva. It's like, dude, I'm into this because of you. Like, I grew up, you know, idolizing you, right? So I wonder if that does come into play, man. If that's going to be something in the back of his mind is like, oh, God, Jose Aldo, this is such a huge opportunity or whatever, right? Listen, man, I just think so. Marlon Vera, he's never been finished in his career, man. In his career, and although he has a perfect opportunity to do that, but let's talk about those kicks, man. You said they're gone. I think that he's choosing to taper off of the kicks. I think it's for a deliberate choice, and I think part of that is the gas tank, man. Jose Aldo is another one who you get towards those championship rounds. Now, this is only going to be a 3-round fight, but you get towards those championship rounds, and he might start to gas out a little bit. But let's contrast that with, listen, man, dude's won 8 of his 12 title fights in the UFC, and that is just, you know, and we can just stop there. Come on, bro. 8 of 12 title fights. Look at who you're fighting, man. So I think this fight is an absolute must win for Aldo. But if Vera wins this fight, that has to put him only like a step away from a title shot, right? Look at the credentials of Aldo. Look at who he has beaten. Look at the people. If you beat Jose Aldo and you look at all the people he's beaten, that's like a message about all the people he's beaten, man. This is a dude coming up from 145 down to 135. So it's like, if you can beat Aldo, you got a good chance of beating a lot of other individuals.
Yeah, Derick, I'd have to agree with that, except maybe only in the fact of how Marlon Vera gets it done. Because if he gets it done where it's actually kind of a very close fight, not too impressive, then I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. And I'd say I maybe feed him to 1 or 2 more top contenders before giving him to Petr Yan, because, man, in that Yan fight versus Aldo, it was really evident that Petr Yan was just letting him get to the 5th round, just out of respect. like it wasn't because Jose Aldo wanted to be there or anything. It was just like, hey, man, okay, we're here in the 5th. I'm okay with finishing you now, and I'm going to put this to the end. So if Marlon Vera is able to actually dominate him and keep going, then I think it speaks levels. And yes, I'd put him, you know, up there with a lot of the top contenders, man, 1 through 5, whoever he wants. But if he's, you know, taps, or if he's, you know, going pitter patter with Jose Aldo back and forth, I necessarily wouldn't do it like that. What do you think about that?
Listen, man, I have a hard time justifying. I'm a big Chito Vera fan, but I have a hard time justifying moving from 15 to a title shot, right? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you do have to do some more work. I said his last 5 isn't that impressive, in all honesty, man. And to be really honest, man, if it's honesty hour, I do think that Sean O'Malley win was pretty fluky. Now, a win is a win is a win. Dude got his leg busted up, man. You did the right thing, but it's not like you outclassed the man. Sean O'Malley, in all honesty, he was winning the fight until he lost, which is, I mean, that's MMA. That's the sport, though. But I think that if he would have came out and dominated O'Malley, I would have a lot more confidence in Marlon Vera. But ultimately, it comes down to this. Dude's never been finished, man. I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's very, I know me and you, I don't know if this is an inside thing between me and you, AJ, but Chito Vera is also a big David Goggins fan. He's like says he's one of the few people who has access to David Goggins' phone number and all that stuff, man. So this dude is a competitor, and he says he's willing to die in that cage to get the win against Aldo. So ultimately, man, who are you going with and why?
Well, Derick. Oh man, I had this going as a striking battle and desperation for Aldo, man, because he does need a win, like you said, in those last three losing it, man. But now I might have to change my pick, right? Man. You might have convinced me for it, Derick, especially because I had it Aldo going by decision. But you know what, man, I think I'm gonna do it on that Goggins quote, man. That's never let me down before. Yeah, and I'm going Chito Vera.
Listen, man.
Win second round.
There we go. Listen, it's a fan favorite. This is, you can't be mad at either one of the winners of this fight, but I am going to go Aldo. He is a -140 favorite in this, and I just think that his last five has just been, come on, that's top of the heap opposition, man. And with your back against the wall, I think Jose Aldo's coming out blitzing, and it's always a gamble when you come out blitzing, right? You either win or you lose. It's literally a 50-50 shot, man. So it can't just keep going lose. You got to hit that reset button after a while, but we'll see what happens, man. But it is the moment we have all been waiting for. This is the main event. And in all honesty, you probably already thought we talked about the main event like 2-3 fights ago, all these star-studded matchups, man. But we got Wonderboy, Stephen Thompson facing off against Handz of Steel, Neal, man. And in all honesty, Neal, while, I mean, I know Neal, he's been popular in my mind and in the reality I live in. Dude hasn't really fought super actively. Dude's 5-0 in the UFC, and a lot of people, listen, he's a -120 favorite. Dude's 5-0 in the UFC facing off against Wonderboy. That speaks a lot of volume right there, man. So let me set the table, man. Stephen Thompson, he's a two-time welterweight title challenger, right? And he's a 5-time world champion kickboxer facing off against Neal, who has a 77% finish rate in his career, and he trains at Fortis MMA, and I love that gym, man. Them Texas boys don't play. Now, opponents who fight quote-unquote downhill, they always have the most success against Wonderboy. But they have to be wary because of his incredible counter-striking, right? What do you think Neal has in his tool bag that would surprise Wonderboy on Saturday night, if there is any surprises that can even come towards Wonderboy at this point?
And it's funny you say that, the surprises, Derick, because I think that's going to have to be something Geoff Neal does. And I think it's a power that he possesses. Handz of Steel is real, man. He does really, if he's able to catch Stephen Thompson a little bit off guard, not necessarily seeing the punch, and those are the punches that hurt you the most, the ones you don't see, I think that's going to be the X factor that gives Geoff Neal the chance. Other than that, man, I think Stephen Thompson is just going to be able to rain down, stay at range, pick him apart, do necessarily control the dance, and actually get the job done in the decision. But man, if there's going to be anything that does it, I think that's what it has to be, is something that surprises him. And I don't necessarily know if that's capable. What do you think? Do you think Geoff Neal is going to be able to surprise?
I don't know if the only surprise that would happen, because Geoff Neal does have this in his tool bag, is the wrestling. A lot of opponents don't wrestle Wonderboy, and he's kicking you all over the place. How do you stop kicks? You catch the kick and you take him to the ground and you say, stop kicking me. You got to use your hands. You got to do something else. Just stop that, right? Now, I don't know if that's going to be it, but I know it's in his tool bag. But this is the thing that I notice in almost every Wonderboy fight. He gets clipped at least once a fight, and it happens the same exact way every single time. It's him pop, backing up, because that's what he does. He backs and counters. Guess what? You're fighting in a really tiny cage, man, over there in Las Vegas. And in his last fight against Vicente Luque, what happened? He thought he had a little more room, ended up not having it, got caught by a hook against the cage. It's one of those stories. I don't remember who it was. I think it was, I told you, Al Hassan. Everybody he ended up knocking out had one thing in common. Their back was against the cage. Stephen Thompson let his back get against the cage, and that's where he's in the absolute most danger. But that's why he's the Wonderboy, because he has a way, somehow, some way, keeps keeps it in the middle of the cage, keeps it in the center with the bouncy stance, the switch, switching his stances all the time, hitting you with kicks, hitting you with teeps, hitting you with everything, man. But this is what's really interesting, man. Geoff Neal is a southpaw, right? And given that Wonderboy Thompson, even though he's a switch fighter, he got a solid right hand and a left hand. But if you're a southpaw fighter and Wonderboy wants to go, it would have to be southpaw. So if Wonderboy goes southpaw, Geoff Neal southpaw, that leaves the body open for both of them for kicks, man. Who gets the advantage in terms of the kicks to the body, out of these two fighters? I know Wonderboy's known for his kicks, but let's just, humor me here.
I was going to say, if let's just say, Stephen Thompson, he has the advantage on kicks on paper, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
But Geoff Neal, he does have that. He does also possess that exact same skill, man. And he's nothing to be toyed with in the kicking department. Now, I think where it does taper off, and I actually was going to ask you this question, Derick. If Geoff Neal doesn't get it done in the first round, do you think he stands a chance going into the fight in the second and third? Because I think he does taper a little bit in the fights, especially if he doesn't get it to the ground and Thompson's able just to pick him apart. Well, now, I think personally, I think if he is able to close that distance, get inside, tender up that body, and then get him to the ground, it's going to be a longer night for Thompson. But I don't know if it goes that way. What do you think?
Well, in all honesty, it's like, let's look at his entire UFC career. Geoff Neal's only gone to the third round once. Only one time in all of his UFC fights, man. And versus a dude who has gone in 5 rounds many, many times, man. Like, it's a dangerous game to be playing. So I do think his best shot is to try to get him out of there early, man. But we know it's easier said than done, man. There's only one person who's been able to get Wonderboy out of there inside of the distance in his last 5, and that is Anthony Pettis. That's not even Tyron Woodley, but Anthony Pettis when he hit him with a Superman punch and got him out of there. But let's be honest, too. Out of 21 career fights, or is it 20 career fights? Yeah, out of 20 career fights, Wonderboy got stopped once. He's been knocked out once, and that was in his last 5. And dude's like 38. This is a tough test, man. And I think Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is ranked number 5 for a reason. I think that reason is because dude's had title shots. He's shown that he hasn't been able to get it done to be a challenger, but he is an incredible gatekeeper, and you would be doing a disservice to put him anywhere outside of the top 5, in all honesty. Now, both fighters, man, they average less than 1 takedown per fight. So I know I said Geoff Neal, he's got it in his bag because he does pull it out every now and then, but they average, both of them, less than a takedown per fight. So it's fair to expect that this is going to be a striking contest this weekend. In the words of Conor McGregor, he's powerful and he's fast, and that's what I'm talking about, Geoff Neal in this one, right? So Geoff Neal, he's powerful, he's fast, but precision beats power and timing beats speed. And if that's the name of the game, I don't see how Geoff Neal wins this fight this weekend, man. Give me any scenario you got outside of getting him out there in the first round with a knockout punch or whatever. And obviously it's been an anomaly. What are realistic paths to victory for Geoff Neal this weekend?
I think the only way outside of a round 1 knockout win, early stoppage, Derick, is just getting in the inside and making it a dogfight. Because that's the one thing a point fighter can't really necessarily handle is that pressure. Somebody's inside, you can't land, and your punches don't have that pop on them, especially when they're half thrown. I think that's the only other way if he's going to get inside, clinch him up, take him down, make Stephen Thompson work. Because you're right, and you were alluding to this earlier, Derick. Man, Stephen Thompson isn't ever outperformed. He's always in the fight. Like, no matter what, if you have him slated, man, that night, it's going to be a long night. If anything you do, even Anthony Pettis, when he put him away in the Superman punch round 2, it was still a close fight. Mm-hmm. He's always going to be there, and it's always going to be a scrap. You're going to feel him the next day. Yeah, man, it's going to be a rough one for him. What do you think?
Well, listen, man, paths to victory for Geoff Neal, I got 2. One is that quick knockout. The other one is effectively wrestling him and taking away all of his striking, man. Stephen Thompson, we've seen when Tyron Woodley was able to get him in the ground and pound. Like, the ground and pound is the real path to victory, in all honesty. It has to be you just grab him, don't let him do nothing crazy, and just punch his face in, rain down elbows, call it a day. We know Geoff Neal, Handz of Steel, he's got the power. But Stephen Thompson got the power too, man, and he's just as good with his right hand as he is with his left, which is a scary, scary combination, man. So ultimately, listen, man, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's got 7 knockouts underneath his belt, and he's only been finished once, like I said, which was a knockout. He's got 1 submission as well. Now, Geoff Neal, he's got 8 knockouts, 2 submissions. So this is like even in terms of like on the paper to a degree. But once again, Geoff Neal, he's a minus 120 favorite in this fight. And I'm going to go ahead and give you my pick, man. And I'm going against the odds makers. I'm going Wonderboy Thompson, and I'm going with the KO round 4. I think he's going to drag Geoff Neal out to those championship rounds, to those deep waters nobody wants to be in. Geoff Neal even said it. He was all like, dude, who wants to go out and fight a 5-round fight? I know I don't, but I'm going to give the fans what they want. But Stephen Thompson, man, I don't think he cares about what the fans want. He's going to go 5 rounds regardless of who you put in front of him, regardless of what day it is, regardless if he got a nice meal in before or not. He's going 5 rounds. It does not matter. This is Wonderboy, and I think he's got a chip on his shoulder and something to prove, especially after his big win where he almost knocked out Vicente Luque in his last fight, that is a tough opponent right there. So who you got and why, AJ?
Man, Derick, I'll give you my pick first, but I wanted to pose a question to you. I'm going Thompson by decision, specifically because I think he's going to drag it out to the deep waters, and I don't think Geoff Neal's going to actually be able to do enough to control the fight and go forward. But I think if there is a factor going into what Geoff Neal can do, not necessarily like the question you posed earlier, like what can he do? I think one factor going in leading towards his path to victory is the question why. Like why is this fight even happening? Like is it just these two dudes want to scrap, or like what in the division makes this going forward a big fight? Nothing really for Stephen Thompson, and nothing really leads to it. And I do think on paper Stephen Thompson's going to get the decision win, like I said. But if there is something, I think it's the question, why are they fighting? And I think Geoff Neal has a lot more to fight for.
I do think Geoff Neal has a lot more to fight for. I don't think this does much for Wonderboy, but like I said, I think he's firmly in the gatekeeper position, right? You can't put him in the top 4 to 1. You can't put him there, but you can't really put him like 6 through 10. So like 5 is that perfect arbitrary number. But this is also the other reason, dude. We got a very time-tested individual who is a true gatekeeper versus a hot up-and-comer who in his 5 UFC fights, man, Brian Kamazi, knockout round 1. Frank Camacho, knockout round 2. Bilal Muhammad, decision win. Nico Price, knockout round 2. Mike Perry, knockout round 1. I think that's the reason why, man, because we saw it was kind of a boring fight, but we saw what Stephen Thompson can do when you put an absolute power puncher in front of him, and dude can survive and still make it interesting. So I think it's one of those, man. I think Geoff Neal wins this. He's firmly in that title picture at 170, man. I don't know if he can beat Kamaru Usman. I don't know if he's that good yet, but if you could beat Wonderboy, you might be able to beat Usman. You never know, man. I don't even know if Usman could beat Wonderboy. That'd be an interesting fight to see, but that's it, man. So yeah, so ultimately, just apologies, my short-term memory right there, man. You went Wonderboy decision, yeah? I went Wonderboy knockout round 4, so that's the picks. We gave you the sleepers, the picks, the recap, the whole 9, man. This is going to be an incredible card this weekend and a great one to round out 2020, man. So instead of doing the traditional thing we always do, which is the fight predictions and fight of the night predictions and all that stuff, man, I actually wanted to pose a question to you, AJ, to close this one out, man. So, folks, if you're tuning in with us right now, if you're still watching this deep into the show, we appreciate you, man, and we want to let you know that 2020 has been an absolute crazy, you know what I'm saying, anomaly of a year. A lot of bad has come, but a lot of new is to come, and hopefully did come. I wanted to ask you, AJ, man, what can you tell the people about the end of 2020 and what, the mindset to go into with 2021, man? It's not the end of the world. It was a tough year, man, but life will go on. What advice, what wise words do you got for the people? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Nah, man, I love it, man. And, leading into 2020, I guess leading into every single day, every day is the start of a new day and every day is greener on the grass. You know what I'm saying? And I guess the biggest advice I can say came a little earlier in the show, Derick. Can't hurt me.
Yep.
Can't hurt me with David Goggins, brother. Just keep your head up, man. This world, 2020, like you said, is proven a little rough and proven to kind of crush some things, but a lot of growth. And I hope for you, as it has for me, and I hope for the viewers too, has provided a lot of growth in this becoming from the ashes, sort of phoenix-like, how they say. And I guess that's the whole mentality I've had towards it. It just can't hurt me. Keep the head up and keep moving forward, man, and keep going. It leads to a lot of blessings in life. What do you think? What's one for you?
Well, first, man, that's wonderful advice, man. That's all you could do. You just keep going. Really, man. Anything that happens to you, just keep going. And mine is a little bit of a cliche, man. But listen, man, tough times don't last, man. You know what I'm saying? Tough people do. Tough people will make it happen. And if there's anything I could tell you, man, it's the same philosophy I live by every day, which is this, man. One foot after the other one, man. One step at a time. That's it, man. Don't think too far into the future. Don't think too back into the past, man. If you're living in the moment, then that's when you truly at peace, at least for a little bit, man. Tough stuff is always going to come back, and 2020 was so rough because nobody expected it. But guess what? It's just like that punch that you get caught with that you didn't see coming, man. You get back up and you go back to the drawing board and you go and make it happen, man. So that's all we got this week at the All Factors Considered camp. I do want to let you know we do have a new blog space up. It's called After Further Consideration, where we'll do a little bit of post-fight recap stuff. I'll go write some articles, all that good stuff for you guys. But you know where to find it in the show notes. Hit us up. You know what I'm saying? At the website, Portland Freethinkers Club /AFC. Follow us on Instagram, at All Factors Considered. Give us a follow on Twitter at AFC Fight Talk. It's all that stuff down there. You know where to find us, man. But we focus on the fights this weekend. If there's anything we do good, if there's one thing that we know how to do the best, man, that's watch some fights on Saturday. So we gonna make it happen. This was a pleasure. It's been an honor breaking down the fights with you, AJ. And folks, that's all we got. Until next time, peace.